The air, thick with the cloying sweetness of white lilies, felt less like a spring embrace and more like a suffocating shroud. It was Mother's Day, a day consecrated to warmth, to gratitude, to the quiet, unspoken affirmation of bonds believed to be unbreakable. I had embarked on the familiar 3-hour pilgrimage from my small, sun-drenched apartment in Boston, Massachusetts, to her meticulously preserved Victorian sanctuary, nestled in the rolling hills of upstate New York. In my hand, a vibrant bouquet of her cherished white lilies, tucked securely within my purse, a small velvet-wrapped package containing an antique locket, a piece I had painstakingly sourced over months, its delicate silver surface engraved with the tender initials M and E, for Mom and Alara. My day, meticulously choreographed, was a tapestry woven with threads of hope and anticipation. A leisurely brunch at her favorite quaint cafe, a contemplative stroll through the vibrant botanical gardens she so adored, culminating in a tranquil evening spent curled on the sofa, revisiting the cinematic classics of our shared past. I had envisioned her smile, the way her eyes, usually so guarded, would crinkle at the corners, a genuine warmth radiating as she discovered the locket, a tangible symbol of my enduring affection, and the countless hours I had poured into finding something truly meaningful. It was to be a day of perfect harmony, a long-awaited balm for the quiet, insidious chasm that had, over the years, widened between us. Instead, it became the crucible in which my world, once seemingly solid, was irrevocably shattered, its fragments scattering into an abyss of disbelief and profound sorrow. The chill that permeated the air upon my arrival was not born of the early May breeze, but rather emanated from the very threshold of her home, from the moment her hand, hesitant and almost clinical, turned the doorknob. Her smile, typically a swift and radiant bloom, was now a thin, brittle line, stretched taut across her lips. Her eyes, those familiar hazel pools that mirrored my own, held a glacial coldness, an unyielding detachment I had never before witnessed, certainly not directed with such chilling precision at me. "Alara," she articulated, her voice devoid of the comforting cadence I craved, the warmth I remembered from childhood lullabies, and the enveloping security of her embrace. "You're here." It was not an invitation, not a welcome, but a stark, unembellished statement of fact, delivered with the dispassionate accuracy of a surgeon's scalpel. My heart, which moments before had thrummed with a nervous, hopeful anticipation, plummeted, a leaden weight sinking into the pit of my stomach. I attempted to dismiss the subtle tremor in her voice, the rigid stiffness of her posture, as mere fatigue or perhaps the lingering effects of a minor ailment. I extended the lilies, their pristine white petals, a stark, almost defiant contrast to the sudden, oppressive darkness that seemed to coalesce around the entryway. "Happy Mother's Day, Mom," I managed, my voice a little too bright, a little too infused with a desperate, fragile hope. She accepted the bouquet, but her fingers barely grazed mine, a fleeting, almost imperceptible contact. She did not inhale their delicate fragrance. She did not even cast a glance at their vibrant beauty. Instead, she placed them with an unnerving precision on the hall table, as if they were a burdensome obligation, a chore to be dispatched, rather than a heartfelt offering. "Come in," she finally uttered, stepping aside, her movement minimal, almost reluctant. The house, typically a sanctuary imbued with the comforting aroma of her freshly baked apple pie or the subtle, earthy scent of her thriving garden, now felt sterile, hushed, almost devoid of life. I followed her, my footsteps echoing unnaturally on the polished hardwood floors, my gaze sweeping frantically across the familiar contours of the living room. I searched, desperately, for something, anything, to anchor me, to dispel the growing sense of unease. And then I saw it. On the antique mahogany coffee table, a piece of furniture usually adorned with cherished family photographs and her prized collection of delicate porcelain figurines, sat a meticulously arranged collection of boxes. Not just any boxes. These were the very boxes I had carefully selected, lovingly wrapped, and adorned with ribbons and bows year after year for her birthdays, for Christmas, for countless Mother's Day celebrations. They were stacked with an almost clinical precision, each one a silent, damning accusation. My breath hitched, a sharp, painful gasp. A knot, tight and suffocating, formed in my throat, rendering speech, even a simple swallow, an arduous task. "Mom, what is this?" I managed to articulate, my voice barely a strained whisper, barely audible above the frantic pounding of my own heart. She turned to face me, her expression unyielding, a mask of impenetrable resolve. "These are your gifts, Alara." Her gaze, unwavering and piercing, seemed to bore directly through me, stripping away any pretense of composure. Every single one you've ever given me. My mind, a frantic whirlwind of confusion and disbelief, raced, desperately attempting to grasp the incomprehensible. Was this some elaborate, meticulously orchestrated, and profoundly cruel jest? A test of my emotional fortitude? My hands, now visibly trembling, clutched the antique locket within my purse, its delicate weight suddenly feeling like a leaden burden, a symbol of a love unrequited. "I don't understand," I stammered, my voice cracking, betraying the fragile composure I desperately tried to maintain. "Why are they here? Why are you—" She moved towards the coffee table, her movements deliberate, almost theatrically slow, each step a calculated punctuation mark in the unfolding drama. She reached for the topmost box, a small, velvet-covered container that had once held the lustrous pearl necklace I had presented to her on her 60th birthday, a milestone I had believed we would celebrate with joy and shared memories. "Because," she articulated, her voice now rising, shedding its flat, emotionless tone, and acquiring a sharp, cutting edge that sliced through the silence. "You're not my daughter today." The words, delivered with the force of a physical blow, stole the very air from my lungs, leaving me gasping, disoriented. My vision blurred, the elegant room around me spinning in a dizzying vortex of confusion and despair. "What?" I managed to gasp, my voice reduced to an almost inaudible whisper. "What are you saying?" She looked at me, her eyes utterly devoid of any recognition, any flicker of the maternal love I had always, perhaps foolishly believed was an immutable constant. It was as if she were gazing upon a stranger, an unwelcome intruder who had trespassed upon her sacred space. "I'm saying you're not my daughter. Not anymore. Not after what you've done." She extended the velvet box, holding it out to me as if it were contaminated, a vessel of contagion to be swiftly removed. "Take them. I don't want them. I don't want anything from you." The pearl necklace, once a cherished symbol of my love and the painstaking effort I had invested, now felt like an unbearable burden, a tangible manifestation of her absolute rejection. My hand, acting on instinct, began to reach out, but I found myself utterly incapable of touching it, as if the very act would confirm the devastating reality of the moment. My mind reeled, a desperate, frantic search for an explanation, a logical reason for this sudden, brutal dismissal. What egregious act had I committed? What could possibly warrant such a complete and utter disownment, delivered with such chilling precision on Mother's Day of all days? The last time we had conversed, merely a week prior, it had been a conversation of mundane pleasantries, albeit tinged with the familiar, subtle strain that had become the hallmark of our interactions. We had discussed her garden, the nascent blooms, the promise of spring. There had been no arguments, no harsh words exchanged, no overt signs of discord. This, then, was a calculated, premeditated act of cruelty, meticulously designed to inflict the maximum possible pain. The silence that descended upon the room was deafening, a palpable entity, punctuated only by the frantic, desperate pounding of my own heart against my ribs. The lilies, abandoned on the hall table, once a vibrant symbol of hope and renewal, now seemed to mock me, their pristine white petals a stark, ironic reminder of the purity of my intentions, now ruthlessly trampled underfoot. A cold dread, chilling me to the very core of my being, began to spread through me, an icy tendril of despair. This was not merely a disagreement, not a temporary rift. This was an execution, and I, standing there in the opulent living room, was the condemned, awaiting the final, crushing blow. The crushing weight of her pronouncement, "You're not my daughter today," settled upon me, a burden far heavier than any physical load I had ever borne. It transcended mere words. It was the chilling finality embedded in her tone, the unshakable conviction blazing in her eyes, that truly pierced me. This was not a fleeting threat, but an absolute declaration, etched in the very fabric of the moment. My mind, still reeling from the initial shock, frantically scoured the archives of our shared history, desperately seeking a precedent, a pivotal moment that could possibly illuminate this seismic shift in our relationship. Yet, there was nothing. No cataclysmic argument, no unforgivable transgression that stood out. Only a slow, insidious erosion, a gradual drifting apart that I had, with every fiber of my being, clung to the hope of mending. Our relationship, from its nascent stages, had always been a labyrinth of complexities, a delicate, precarious dance between her towering expectations and my inevitable, often perceived, disappointments. My mother, Eleanor, was a woman forged from immense pride and an unyielding adherence to rigid principles. She placed an almost sacred value on appearance, on reputation, and on an unspoken yet fiercely enforced code of conduct. From my earliest memories, I absorbed the painful lesson that her love felt inherently conditional, a fleeting reward bestowed only when I meticulously met her exacting standards. If I achieved academic excellence, if my artwork garnered a coveted prize, if I presented myself impeccably at family gatherings, I might be granted a fleeting, almost imperceptible smile, a rare whispered word of praise that felt like liquid gold. But should I dare to deviate, to voice an opinion that diverged from hers, or to pursue a path she had not explicitly sanctioned, the warmth would recede, replaced by a cool, pervasive disapproval that felt like a physical chill, seeping into my very bones. I recall with vivid clarity a particular incident during my high school years when, in a burst of teenage rebellion and nascent self-expression, I decided to dye my hair a vibrant, audacious shade of blue. It was, undeniably, an act of defiance, but equally it was an outward manifestation of my burgeoning individuality. Her reaction was not the explosive anger I might have anticipated. Instead, it was a profound, icy silence that stretched for days, an oppressive blanket that smothered any attempt at communication. She looked through me, spoke around me, as if I had suddenly become invisible, a phantom haunting her meticulously ordered world. When she finally deigned to acknowledge my existence, it was solely to deliver a cutting remark. "You look ridiculous. What will people think?" Her concern, I realized even then with a child's nascent understanding, was never for my happiness, for my burgeoning sense of self, but solely for how my choices might reflect upon her carefully constructed facade. As the years unfolded and I transitioned into adulthood, these subtle rejections, these quiet acts of disapproval, became increasingly pronounced, more deeply etched into the fabric of our interactions. When I made the pivotal decision to pursue art history in college, a path diametrically opposed to the legal career she had meticulously envisioned for me, her disappointment was a palpable entity, a heavy cloud that hung in the air between us. "Art history?" she had scoffed, her voice laced with thinly veiled disdain. "What kind of career will that lead to, Alara? You'll never make a living. You'll be a burden." Her words, though softened by a dismissive sigh, cut deep, leaving raw, bleeding wounds. I attempted, with a desperate earnestness, to articulate my passion, the profound way in which art resonated with my soul, the intellectual stimulation it offered. But she merely waved her hand, a dismissive gesture that swept away my aspirations as if they were mere dust motes. "Dreams don't pay the bills, dear. Reality does." Despite her unwavering disapproval, I persevered, pursuing my degree with a fierce determination, working 2 demanding part-time jobs to sustain myself, fueled by an almost desperate need to prove her wrong. Every small triumph, every hard-won scholarship, every exhibition I had the privilege of helping to curate, felt like a silent act of rebellion, a desperate unspoken plea for her recognition, for a flicker of pride in her eyes. Yet, her praise, when it did occasionally materialize, was invariably tinged with a caveat, a subtle undermining that diminished its impact. "It's nice, Alara, but it's not a stable career." Or, "You're doing well for yourself, considering you didn't listen to my advice." It was a relentless, soul-crushing cycle. It was never enough. I was never enough. The most profound point of contention, the unspoken, festering wound that perpetually throbbed beneath the surface of our strained relationship, was my deep and abiding connection with my father, David. He was, in every conceivable aspect, the antithesis of my mother, warm, jovial, possessed of an almost boundless, unconditional love. He was the unwavering beacon who nurtured my artistic endeavors, who, with a twinkle in his eye, declared my blue hair beautiful, who celebrated my every quirky inclination. He was my anchor, my safe harbor in a world that often felt turbulent and unpredictable. But his sudden, unexpected passing when I was a mere 20 years old left a gaping, agonizing void in my life, and an even more profound, unfillable chasm in my mother's. In the wake of his death, she retreated further into the impenetrable fortress of herself, becoming even more rigid, more relentlessly critical. It was as if, in some unspoken, deeply buried way, she held me accountable for his absence, for the unbearable loss of the one person who possessed the unique ability to temper her severity, to bring a rare softness to her hardened edges. I tried with every ounce of my being to comfort her, to be her unwavering support in her darkest hour. But she pushed me away, her grief manifesting as an impenetrable glacial wall that repelled all attempts at connection. "You don't understand, Alara," she would often utter, her voice laced with a profound, corrosive bitterness. "You don't know what it's like to lose everything." But I did. I had lost him too. And in her profound, almost pathological withdrawal, I felt with a chilling certainty that I was losing her as well, slipping through my fingers like grains of sand. Over the preceding years, our interactions had devolved into a series of increasingly superficial exchanges. Phone calls were brief, perfunctory affairs, filled with polite, almost robotic inquiries about the weather or the mundane details of my job, utterly devoid of any genuine emotional resonance. Visits to her home became strained, awkward encounters, punctuated by long, uncomfortable silences and her subtle yet persistent criticisms of my life choices, my apartment, my clothes, my very existence. I had exhausted every conceivable avenue in my desperate attempts to bridge the ever-widening chasm between us. I sent her thoughtful gifts, always striving to unearth something that resonated with her interests, something that unequivocally demonstrated my intimate knowledge of her preferences, my profound care for her well-being. I diligently called her every Sunday, a ritual I maintained even when the well of conversation ran dry, simply to hear the sound of her voice, to confirm her continued presence in my life. I offered to assist her with the arduous tasks of her sprawling garden, to undertake minor repairs around the house, to simply sit in companionable silence and share a cup of tea. Yet, each earnest attempt felt like pushing against a formidable, unyielding locked door. She would accept the gestures, the material offerings, but never the genuine connection, the emotional intimacy I so desperately craved. It was as if she had long ago rendered a definitive judgment. I was a perpetual disappointment, an inherent failure, and no amount of effort, no act of love, could ever alter her preconceived notion. The locket nestled in my purse, the very piece I had intended to present to her on this fateful day, felt like the culmination of all my desperate efforts, a silent, fervent plea for her elusive love. It was a meticulously crafted replica of a locket my father had gifted her on their first wedding anniversary, a tender anecdote she had recounted to me countless times throughout my childhood, a rare, precious glimpse into a softer, more loving facet of her personality. I had harbored the fervent hope that this tangible link to their shared past, to a time when love seemed less complicated, would evoke a cherished memory, a faint flicker of the warmth she had once, however fleetingly, extended towards me. But now, standing in the sterile, silent expanse of her living room, witnessing her hand me back the very symbols of my deepest affection, I was confronted with the brutal, undeniable futility of my relentless efforts. She was not merely rejecting the gifts. She was, with a chilling finality, rejecting me. She was rejecting the daughter who had, with every fiber of her being, striven to earn her love, to fill the agonizing void left by my father's untimely absence. The pain that coursed through me was excruciating, a sharp, searing agony that eclipsed all the smaller, accumulated hurts of the past. This was not merely a bad day, a temporary setback. This was the final, definitive severing of a tie I had clung to with a desperate, almost pathological tenacity. The cryptic phrase, "What you've done," which she had uttered with such chilling conviction, hung in the oppressive air, an invisible yet potent accusation. But I knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within my soul, that her words were not rooted in any recent transgression. They were about everything I was, everything I wasn't, in her unforgiving eyes. They were about a lifetime of failing to measure up, of perpetually falling short of the unattainable ideal of the daughter she desired, the daughter she, in her own distorted reality, believed she deserved. And on Mother's Day, of all days, she had chosen to make that abundantly, brutally clear, leaving me adrift in a sea of profound, unanswerable questions. The profound silence that descended upon me, following her chilling declaration, "You're not my daughter today," was the most deafening sound I had ever experienced. It reverberated, an oppressive echo, within the cavernous expanse of her living room, and more acutely, within the hollowed-out chambers of my own chest. I stood there, utterly frozen, the antique locket still a heavy, inert weight within my purse, the returned gifts piled before me, a stark, undeniable monument to my utterly failed attempts at forging a genuine connection. My mother, Eleanor, remained motionless, her gaze fixed upon me, her expression unreadable, a cold, distant stare that offered no solace, no flicker of understanding, no hint of explanation. It was in that precise, agonizing moment, amidst the shattered remnants of my most cherished hopes, that a peculiar, almost unsettling calm began to settle over me. A profound, aching sadness, yes, a grief so deep it felt physical, but also, paradoxically, a nascent, fragile sense of clarity. The relentless striving, the desperate, unceasing yearning for her elusive approval, the exhausting, cyclical pattern of trying and inevitably failing to be enough. It all, with a sudden, brutal finality, felt utterly futile, exhausting, and, in its starkest truth, utterly pointless. My gaze drifted to the meticulously stacked boxes on the coffee table, each one a tangible representation of my love, my painstaking effort, a very piece of my essence, now callously discarded. The lustrous pearl necklace, the exquisitely soft cashmere scarf, the crudely but lovingly hand-painted mug I had crafted for her in art class when I was a mere 10 years old, each item a cherished memory, a fragment of my heart, now summarily handed back to me like unwanted refuse, a burden to be reclaimed. It was then, in that moment of profound rejection, that the undeniable truth crystallized within me. This wasn't about me, not truly. This was, in its deepest, most painful core, about her, her profound inability to love unconditionally, her relentless, almost pathological need for control, her own deep-seated, unresolved disappointments that I now understood with a chilling clarity, had absolutely nothing to do with my inherent worth. My father, David, had always, with a gentle, almost wistful tone, tried to explain, "Ilara, your mother loves you in her own way. It's just complicated." But standing there, confronting her cold, unyielding gaze, I finally, unequivocally understood that her complicated love was not a gift, but a crushing burden, a weight I no longer needed nor deserved to carry. It was a tether that had, for far too long, bound me to a past where I was perpetually seeking validation, perpetually feeling inadequate, perpetually striving for an unattainable ideal. I drew a deep, shuddering breath, the faint, sweet scent of lilies now a distant, almost forgotten memory, replaced by the sharp, metallic tang of unshed tears. I did not reach for the gifts. I could not. To reclaim them would be to tacitly accept her narrative, to internalize her brutal rejection, to validate her cruel dismissal. Instead, with a newfound quiet resolve, I turned and walked out of her house, leaving the meticulously stacked boxes, the abandoned lilies, and the shattered remnants of my childhood dreams scattered behind me. The long drive back to Boston was a blur of raw, unbridled emotion, a torrent of tears that streamed down my face, blurring the familiar landscape. I reached for my phone, dialing my best friend Sarah, who, with an unwavering patience and empathy, listened to my broken, disjointed account, her voice a lifeline in the tumultuous storm. "Ilara," she said, her voice gentle yet firm, imbued with an undeniable conviction. "You are more than enough." Her inability to see that, her refusal to acknowledge your worth, is her profound loss, not yours. Her words, deceptively simple yet profoundly resonant, began slowly, painstakingly, to chip away at the years of corrosive self-doubt my mother had so meticulously instilled within me. The days and weeks that followed that devastating Mother's Day unfolded as a period of intense, almost unbearable grief, a profound mourning for a relationship that, in its truest essence, had never truly been what I had so desperately yearned for it to be. I cried until my tear ducts were utterly dry, until there were no more tears left to shed. I replayed every conversation, every interaction, every subtle nuance, searching, with a desperate, almost obsessive fervor, for a different outcome, a different path, a way to rewrite the painful narrative. But slowly, painstakingly, with the resilience born of deep hurt, I began the arduous process of healing. I finally sought therapy, something I had resisted for years, harboring a deep-seated fear that it would merely confirm my mother's unspoken, yet pervasive judgment that I was too sensitive, too emotionally fragile. My therapist, Dr. Evans, a woman of profound insight and gentle wisdom, meticulously helped me untangle the complex, suffocating web of emotions, to comprehend that my mother's actions stemmed not from any inherent flaw within me, but from her own deeply unresolved pain, her own profound limitations. "Ilara," she explained, her voice calm and reassuring, "you cannot force someone to acknowledge your worth if they are unwilling to truly look. Your worth is inherent, an immutable truth, not something to be earned through endless striving or external validation." With this newfound understanding, I began, with a deliberate and conscious effort, to shift my focus inward, to concentrate on myself, on the vibrant, evolving life I was meticulously building, a life I had chosen despite my mother's unwavering disapproval. I poured every ounce of my energy and passion into my work at the art gallery, discovering an immense, unexpected satisfaction in the profound act of connecting people with beauty, with meaning, with the transformative power of art. I meticulously reconnected with old friends, nurturing those precious relationships that were built upon the solid foundations of mutual respect, genuine affection, and unconditional acceptance. And perhaps most significantly, I began to paint again, an act of creative expression I had years ago abandoned, fearing it would expose me, render me too vulnerable, too open to the inevitable, crushing criticism. My canvases became a sacred space for my tumultuous emotions, a vibrant, uninhibited explosion of color and form that eloquently expressed the raw pain, the burgeoning resilience, and the profound, burgeoning joy I was, against all odds, discovering within myself. Each deliberate brushstroke was an act of quiet defiance, a powerful reclamation of my own unique identity, a testament to my burgeoning strength. In this journey of self-discovery, I also found a new kind of family, a chosen family, forged not by blood, but by unwavering love and profound connection. Sarah, my steadfast friend, transcended the boundaries of friendship, becoming more like a sister, a confidant, a true soulmate. My colleagues at the gallery, a diverse and eclectic group of passionate artists and devoted art lovers, coalesced into a supportive, nurturing community that celebrated my individuality and championed my growth. And then there was Daniel, a kind, gentle soul I had the serendipitous fortune of meeting at an art exhibition. He saw me, truly saw me, with all my intricate complexities and raw vulnerabilities, and loved me fiercely, unconditionally, without reservation. He celebrated my every success, offered unwavering comfort in my moments of doubt, and never once, not for a single moment, made me feel as though I needed to be anything other than my authentic self. With him, I learned, for the very first time, what true, reciprocal love felt like. A love that did not demand, but embraced. A love that did not criticize, but uplifted, nurtured, and empowered. Mother's Day arrived again the following year. The white lilies, vibrant and fragrant, were blooming in my own small, meticulously tended garden, a sanctuary I had cultivated with immense care and profound love. I did not send my mother flowers. I did not make the customary phone call. There was no lingering bitterness, no simmering anger, just a quiet, profound acceptance of the reality of our fractured relationship. I spent the day with Daniel and Sarah picnicking in a sun-drenched park, our laughter echoing freely through the warm spring air, sharing stories, creating new, joyful memories that would forever be etched in the tapestry of my life. As I watched Sarah's children, their faces alight with unadulterated joy, chase iridescent butterflies across the verdant lawn, their innocent laughter a symphony of pure happiness, I realized, with a profound sense of peace, that daughterhood was not merely defined by a biological connection. It was, in its truest, most beautiful form, about being loved, cherished, and unconditionally accepted for precisely who you are. It was about finding your rightful place in the vast, intricate tapestry of the world, surrounded by individuals who possess the unique ability to see your inherent light, even when others, through their own limitations, choose to dim it. My mother's words, "You're not my daughter today," once a devastating, soul-crushing blow, had, paradoxically, become a powerful catalyst for profound transformation. They had compelled me to confront a painful, undeniable truth, to courageously sever a toxic, debilitating tie, and to finally embark upon a transformative journey of self-discovery and radical self-acceptance. I was no longer defined by her unattainable expectations or her relentless rejections. I was Alara, an artist, a loyal friend, a loving partner, a woman who had, against all odds, found her own unwavering strength, her own authentic voice, and her own beautiful, expansive definition of family. The gifts she had so cruelly returned that day still resided, untouched, within a dusty box in my attic, a silent, poignant reminder of a painful past I had, through sheer resilience, transcended. But the most valuable, most profound gift she had inadvertently bestowed upon me was the precious freedom to finally become my own person, to reclaim my own daughterhood, not through the distorted lens of her eyes, but through the clear, compassionate gaze of my own. And that, I realized, with a heart overflowing with gratitude and peace, was the greatest inheritance of all, a treasure beyond measure.